If you're currently running a hyperbaric clinic and I came knocking on your door asking, are you fully compliant with all the safety and regulatory requirements? Could you confidently say yes? Many clinic owners probably can't. Not necessarily because you're cutting corners, but maybe because you don't even know what all the requirements actually are. Well, in this video, we're going to change that. Especially over the last few years, we've seen incredible growth inside the hyperbaric industry. Patient awareness, clinic access has grown exponentially. More clinics are opening up all over the world, adding hyperbaric oxygen to the list of services. I couldn't be more excited to see how much growth the hyperbaric industry is experiencing, because to me that means so many more patients are getting access to this incredibly powerful and unique therapy. Unfortunately, most of this growth has not come with an equal increase in safety training, in protocol training, in operational training, and there are clinics out there operating that are not meeting all of the compliance requirements. In most of those cases, I believe if the compliance requirements are not being met, that's not due to purposeful or reckless behavior. Historically, it's actually been difficult to gain access to all of the regulatory requirements necessary to run a hyperbaric clinic. So many of the regulations are actually spread across a number of different agencies: the NFPA, ASME and PVHO, the FDA. There may also be additional regulations inside your own professional licensure or even within your state or local fire departments. To date, I've not seen any individual or company really consolidate all of this information into one clear and usable resource. Even in my own journey, I spent 15 years organizing the requirements that I needed to meet based on all of those agencies, my license, and my local fire departments. For the last 8 years, I've been training other practitioners to do the same. Unfortunately, there's quite a bit of this is how I've done it in the past, and so that's what I expect to do in the present and future. What I can promise you today is that if you've been getting away with being non-compliant in the past, that is all going to change dramatically in the present and very near future. Compliance isn't just about checking boxes so that you could avoid liability. It's also about creating systems that keep your patients, your staff, and your clinic safe. It's a system that you have to have in place to help prevent the types of tragedies that we've seen in this past year. So what does compliance actually mean? Compliance is adherence to the established safety and operational standards. The hyperbaric industry has a number of already established rules and regulations when it comes to operating a hyperbaric clinic. It applies to patient screening, it applies to treatment delivery and operations, and it applies to emergency procedures. It's a system in place inside your clinic. It's not a singular rule or a singular checklist. Compliance exists to reduce preventable risk. The one thing that every hyperbaric accident that I'm aware of has in common is that it was preventable. And so we have the responsibility when delivering hyperbaric oxygen to know all of the rules and regulations and to make sure that we're complying with said rules and regulations while delivering this powerful and unique therapy. Safety depends on consistency, not intentions. You need to have a standardized process to prevent these avoidable issues. Whether we're talking about the equipment that you're using and making sure that the equipment that you operate has been safety tested and is certified by the governing agencies that have designed the hyperbaric build-to standards, or we're talking about compliance to just operational rules and regulations. Not being compliant opens you up to liability as far as safety goes with patients and your staff in your clinic, but also liability from a malpractice standpoint, where you may lose insurance coverage because of your non-compliance to the equipment and procedural rules and regulations. So then, if you're running a hyperbaric clinic, what does it mean to be compliant? What are those rules and regulations? If you're completely unfamiliar, or even if you're partially familiar, but you're not sure you have the entire list, we've created a hyperbaric clinic compliance checklist so that you can go through step by step, making sure that you are checking the boxes. Again, it's not just an exercise in box checking. Fulfilling the steps and then going back and either practicing or reviewing these steps periodically needs to be part of that journey. So if you want access to that checklist that we created, you can either scan this QR code or we'll leave a link in the description below as well. But here are some of the highlights. First and foremost, your equipment needs to be approved. What does that mean? If you're using a soft chamber, that means that that chamber needs to at least have an FDA clearance. If you're using a hard chamber, that means that chamber needs to be ASME, the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, and PVHO, which is a subset of ASME, PVHO is pressure vessels for human occupancy. And if your equipment is ASME and PVHO approved, it will have a plaque, a metal stamp on the chamber with the PVHO approved mark. Both hard chambers and soft chambers should also have an FDA clearance. And if your equipment does, then your manufacturer would be able to supply you with an FDA clearance letter showing that the FDA has approved this equipment for use. This is important because there are build to standards that these chambers need to meet or exceed in order to make sure that the equipment that you're utilizing is safe. With everything in healthcare, we have to first do no harm. And in hyperbarics, that means we're starting with equipment that's been safety tested. Some of you may think, well, the equipment that I'm using is for non-FDA approved conditions or indications, so why would I need an FDA approval on the equipment? These are two vastly different conversations. Let's use a drug example. If there was a drug on the market and it was deemed to be safe through clinical trials, and for specific indications, it would be very appropriate to recommend this drug for its approved indications. Over time, if we found out that this already deemed safe drug could also be used in these off-label cases successfully, it's also very appropriate to recommend this drug off-label. There's nothing wrong with that. It happens in medicine all the time. However, if the drug was never deemed safe in the first place, it wouldn't be able to be recommended on-label or off-label. So the first step is the treatment that we're doing deemed safe? And in this case, that starts with the equipment. So if your equipment is not approved for use on-label, then it also cannot be used off-label. If your equipment has been proven safe for human use, then it could be recommended on or off-label the same way a medication could. If you are utilizing a non-compliant hyperbaric chamber in your clinic, the level of liability that you are exposed to as a clinician or as a clinic or as a business altogether is incredibly high. An accident can happen in an approved chamber. An accident can also happen in a non-approved chamber. But in legal cases that I've seen where the person was injured in a non-approved chamber, even if the reason for the injury had nothing to do with the equipment, the case ends there. Did you know that there were approved chambers and unapproved chambers? Yes. Why did you choose to operate a non-approved chamber inside of your clinic? It was cheaper. I liked the blue one. It had lights that I liked. There's not a single valid excuse that you can think of to justify your position of running a non-approved chamber inside your clinic treating patients. And in those cases, the liability will rest solely on the clinic owner or the clinician inside that clinic. That is a level of liability that you should not be comfortable owning. Next, if your fire marshal comes to visit your clinic and asks you for your PVHO stamp and you don't have one, that would be cause enough for them to stop you from operating your equipment. So here you bought this chamber and either you're owning an enormous amount of liability that's unnecessary and really inappropriate, and or you're open to the fact that your fire marshal could shut you down at any moment because your equipment is not compliant. This is all well within the compliance and regulations of the hyperbaric industry. Next, you need to have a safety director, and that safety director is required to be trained. Do you have a safety director? Have they been named on your letterhead? Is that inside your safety binder? The safety binder is your next most important requirement. What are all the casualty procedures and emergency procedures inside your clinic with regard to your equipment and patient management strategy and policies and procedures? You're also required to have a maintenance binder. What's been done on your equipment and when? How often? Just like documentation in patient management, if you didn't write it down, it never happened. So having a maintenance log where you're logging what types of changes were done, who did those changes, when were they done, and are you following the manufacturer's maintenance schedule? It's not just having a safety binder or having a maintenance binder. It's also becoming incredibly familiar with the maintenance schedule and doing the appropriate maintenance at the appropriate time. It's also about knowing what your safety procedures are, what are your emergency procedures, your casualty procedures, and then reviewing them and practicing with your staff, with your chamber operators. You absolutely don't want your first time practicing an emergency procedure in the middle of the emergency itself. It's also about having the proper staff in place. Depending on the type of equipment that you're running, depending on the type of oxygen sources that you're running, these requirements may vary slightly clinic to clinic, but do you have medical oversight? Do you have a medical director? Do you have your safety director? Who are your technicians? Have your technicians been trained and certified? All of this are built-in parts of the rules and regulations inside this hyperbaric industry. They're not incredibly complex. They're not incredibly overburdensome, but they need to be done. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just some of the highlights associated with compliance. But this QR code and the link down in the description below will bring you to a much more comprehensive checklist of what is required in this industry. So please, if you're unfamiliar or you just want to check yourself, please download that list, go bullet by bullet, and make sure that you are meeting or exceeding all of those standards. In addition to that checklist, inside that download is the table of contents to my safety binder. So you can understand inside that binder what each chapter is about and what would be expected inside your safety binder. As with everything, leadership begins at the top. It's all about culture. Do you have a safety culture inside your clinic? Do you drill these safety procedures? If you're not drilling it, if you're not bringing it up, if you don't hold a level of expectation of your staff, what would make your staff want to be practicing and reviewing all of this compliance and safety measures? As the leader of your clinic, it is critically important that you own a safety culture and that you instill a safety culture throughout your entire clinic and with all of your staff. When a patient visits an office or a clinic looking for therapy, there's a general assumption that that clinic is operating according to whatever rules and regulations would govern that clinic or that equipment. There's an assumed level of trust that the patient can come to you for care and that they are going to receive a safe and effective therapy. You need to be incredibly clear with your patients what the potential risks and potential benefits of these therapies are. You need to have clear communication with your patients and be utilizing an informed consent with your patients so that you know that everybody's on the same page. Being compliant with your clinic protects the patient-provider relationship. If you know anything at all about me, you know that the future of the hyperbaric industry is incredibly important to me, and I think if you're watching this video, it's incredibly important to you as well. Compliance inside your clinic cannot be overlooked. It cannot be ignored. You now have at your fingertips the things that you need to make sure that you're compliant. I implore you to download it, I implore you to use it, and I implore you to get your clinic as compliant as possible. Meet or exceed all of the standards inside that hyperbaric checklist and do the right thing for yourself, do the right thing for your clinic, do the right thing for your patients, and do the right thing for this industry. Thanks again for diving with me today and talking about compliance and regulations in the industry, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.